Yo, GM to all our listeners, the Towers back home. Drop a comment, let us know you're here. How are you vibing this music on a Tuesday? Drop a GM if you're listening in from Yalla Bitcoin. Drop a GM if you're coming to our meetup today. Very excited to see the Yalla Bitcoin community in real life. Good morning, Aitana. If you're listening, let's not get on a lot of and that's how if you have good journey. That coffee all the way from Soweto. This guy's taken over the world, really. He's on every beach in Ibiza. He's on residencies in Vegas. This guy is cooking. Also, we'll wait for this drop. I have a good authority that black coffee is actually a hodler. Right? I have on good authority that, especially back in 2021, I don't know what he's doing now, but this guy's holding crypto. This guy knows what's up.
Yo, buddy.
Hey, Craig. Good morning.
Good morning, my man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. That was just a little black coffee before we jump start into it. Do you know the coffee? Are you a fan?
The coffee? No, is it a DJ? Is it?
Yeah, South African DJ, born and bred in Soweto. He plays like this Afro deep house. It's really taken off, pretty global.
I was going to ask you, are you South African? Are you?
I am. I live in Israel now, but I moved here 10 years ago. But born and bred in, I was actually, and this might be a little like sensitive, we just met each other, but I was actually at the 438 cricket game in 2006. Remember that game where Australia hit Australia hit 400. No, it was a one day. Australia hit 435 runs, right, in 50 overs. And we chased it, bro. I was going, we were flying like everyone was dejected after the Aussie innings. And then, Herschel Gibbs came out and just started smacking sixes. We were 14 at a time, a bunch of laties. Like we started, some guy paid us $100 to tune. His name was Lewis. He was a spin bowler on the US side. Some guy paid us $100 to rib him off, to, banter with him, to talk shit to him. We split it up amongst the buddies. Yeah, it was a wild game, eh?
So, I was born in Cape Town.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I went to
Like
primary school
most,
there. Yeah,
like
I went.
most.
Yeah, I was Pinelands and Durbanville, Cape Town, if you know those spots. But yeah, I did primary school there. I left Cape Town when I was 12, went to New Zealand when I was 12, and Australia for the last 14 years. So I'm a bit of I'm a mongrel.
Yeah, I mean the accent's very Australian though.
Is that
Like
yeah? I've hidden the South Africa one quite well out of survival, man. I needed to survive. It wasn't
yeah, I
very
feel you.
popular
I
back
feel you.
then. Jeez, man,
Especially when you.
in '94, man, we weren't very popular.
Good morning, LGM. Especially when you're doing content. I mean, like when you say like "no, dry ass is nice." No one knows what the fuck you have to say.
Nah,
You have
nah.
to tone it down a little bit. You have to accentuate some parts of the word. I learned it from a buddy of mine. He was also in South Africa with me, and he moved to LA. Like he has a nice trad far job there. And you go
Mhm.
listen to him. He sounds like a Eric Trump now when he speaks. Like he's
Oh,
completely killed the accent.
yeah, it does help sometimes, especially New Zealand when they all didn't know who a South African was. That was quite a bit of a tough time. But
How is before we dive into a lot
yeah,
of the meat and we're gonna get Mati involved as well. Like first question I always like to ask people is like, Yalla and I can tell you how crypto is in terms of adoption and awareness in Israel, and the one word is very shit. But I'm wondering in Australia, what's the vibe like now, especially now with the big Trump shift in the US? Like, is there talk about an Aussie strategic reserve, mate, or are we far from that?
no, I think we're pretty far from that at the moment. Australia's a little bit down the other side of the spectrum as far as politics goes compared to where the US is at the moment, or where they've moved to. So we're a bit more along the nanny state side of things still at the moment,
The United
unfortunately,
States,
since the
yeah.
flu hit a few years ago. So, no, the government doesn't seem to want to relinquish much power at the moment. But strategic reserve, well, at the moment, I'm finding with banks here, they've started doing cash deposit limits now. So they're starting to stop us trying to move money to basically trying to stop us moving cash to crypto.
What about withdrawal limits?
Withdrawal
Like
limits, but now deposit limits.
limits as
Deposit
well.
limits is quite strange to me
Yeah.
and scary. So the banks don't
Yeah.
even want our money anymore. So if the bank doesn't want your money, then the hell, what's the point? But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably talk to it also from a business side. Like in Israel, like it's impossible to get a bank account, to open a bank account. Like, a lot of Israel at one point had like 20% of the global, innovate blockchain space, because a lot of the early projects, like the Bancor and the Orbs and all of those, like 2015, 2016, I'm talking about, were Israeli, but none of these projects have is mint the token from an Israeli entity. But the same playbook all the time. Israeli R&D arm that hires people and pays salaries, and then some sort of Cayman Islands, Switzerland, whatever. Am I right, Yael? Is that how do you see that ever coming home? Like, do you see Israeli companies ever being able to mint and issue tokens?
So it really depends for what reasons. And I think we have to consider also that number one, we're a small country where the regulator is already pretty overwhelmed with a variety of financial products that we have. And the economy, the size of the Israeli economy is pretty large, and there's lots to consider. So we have to be mindful of that. On the other side, the Israeli public is also, I believe, fairly uneducated, especially in comparison to, let's say, the US public, about the types of investments out there, what is safe, what is not safe, the risks. And I think that's partially on purpose, because they really want the institutions to have control of people's resources. It's a largely safety net based society, where a lot of the pension money and the so-called 401k equivalent money is being managed by institutions on behalf of the population. So to open up something like that would require immense resources, and that's the first thing. The second thing is that the Israeli version of the SEC is usually following the US version of the SEC. I don't know what's going to happen now that the regulation has laxed in the United States. Now, again, the US public is very much different, and the rules and the taxation and the technologies are much more robust and much more developed. So, for example, you have like in the US, you have self-directed IRA, right? The funds that you get from your employment and allocated there, that you can pretty much invest in whatever you want, including private companies and crypto, right? So
I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big like that. Wow, I'm all for that. Like we show that quite hard in the group, but the problem is with the self-directed IRA. Maybe you have a tip on that. Like there's the company that does it. They quoting now a 500,000 shekel minimum in order to put your money in the self-directed IRA.
Exactly. So to tell you the truth, I don't even know the full extent of it, because they're not talking about it in Israel. They're not advertising it in Israel. And I'm not even sure that you're able to, maybe you can tell me, easily put that in a private offering, because there is no equivalent of a Reg D 506C, which is basically a qualified investor offering in Israel. There's just a restriction on, what a private offering means, up to 35 investors. And there is no, let's say, mass kind of offering to accredited investors. And so that makes things very difficult for the private market, especially because VCs only invest in high-tech, in the companies that are expected to grow times 100, times 1,000. And small businesses and, real estate and small businesses that are not growing super fast, but can expect to get investment from private qualified individuals, there's just no interaction and no liquidity in that space. There is a vacuum. So it only makes sense that there should be the token type economy, not the utility token, but more of a security token. But there's just no rails, no infrastructure for that in Israel, not even because of tokenization or blockchain. Even in just the financial space, there's no infrastructure for that. And institutions, banks, nothing is prepared. And we're frankly like 10 years behind this type of innovation.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, we'll talk about the tokenization of securities in a moment. I'm very glad I got you. Mati, I think, went to bed very late, so we hope he wakes up before market opens so you can make some trades. But I'm happy I got you guys here regardless, because Craig comes, as you can see from his background, he's coming from the left of the spectrum, very hardcore puppet game, trading meme coins with his buddy on stream. And then Yael, you're coming from the right end of the spectrum, wearing a nice suit, going to the regulators saying, ladies and gentlemen, what can we do? What can I add in my prospectus? And it's nice to have those kind of, polars speaking to each other, because I feel like the digital, like I came from a regulated space and now I'm more in the trenches, and it's two different universes. But at the end of the day, I think we're all here for the same purpose. So we'll get to some intros. First we start with a little bit of a Mati, gives us a little chart demonstration, but we'll get to some intros first. We have Craig on the beat, who's a master chartist. So maybe Craig can intro us and show us what he's looking, open the tab, and then Yael, and then we'll get into the question.
Sorry, that broke up a little bit there, just at the end there. Sorry.
I'm saying we'll start with some intros, and maybe you can dish a chart for us, something press to show us like what you're looking at, something interesting. And take over Mati. Mati usually does a chart demonstration. Then we'll go to Yael for some intros, opening remarks, and we'll get straight to it.
Yeah, look, for those, thanks for having me on, guys. I think it's, is it Yale? Is that, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm hello, nice to meet you. Hello. Yeah, look, we're definitely on opposite ends of the spectrum. Nice to be here. A quick intro for myself. I'm Craigscoinpurse from X, for those who don't know me. I've been in the space now full time. I left a startup business my brother-in-law and I did. We're involved in tiny houses, tiny homes, built that up, ended up selling that. And then I decided this space was moving so fast and was so interesting that I wanted to get into it. So I cut the parachute and left my job, quit the job, told the new owner I was off, and came to this space not knowing too much other than I wanted to learn. So spent too much time on the computer. I'm sure, like all of us, learning about this weird thing called crypto and Bitcoin and things like that. You made mention of what am I looking at the moment? Was that the question? What am I looking at?
Yes.
Yeah, look, the main thing that's interesting me at the moment, probably much like everybody else, is Bitcoin. Because that's obviously going to dictate talking from a crypto perspective right now, that's going to dictate what goes up and what goes down. So for me, it's watching the strength of the US dollar as well. I would love that to pull back. US dollar's been quite strong, so I'd love that to cool off just a touch. And then Bitcoin dominance, I'd love that to come down. The reason why we want Bitcoin dominance to come down is that will allow other coins, altcoins, Sol, Ethereum, meme coins, and that to have a chance to breathe and run, which some of the altcoins have managed to do. Obviously, Ray hit all-time high, Sol hit all-time high. So winning alts have done well. Middle and bottom alts have not performed so well. So whether they will or not, this run is something to be seen, because perhaps meme coins have taken a little bit of the steam out of alts from what we've seen so far. So, yeah, what I'm looking at the moment is really just watching Bitcoin like a hawk, because I need to know what it's going to do before I make any of my next moves. But I must admit, that little dip we had to 98 yesterday, I grabbed some more Bitcoin. I don't think this is the top. But yeah, that's my little pitch, guys.
Craig, how does it influence where you're going to go?
Yeah, so look, for me personally, the way I'm set up at the moment, if it goes down from here, I'm a buyer. Obviously, I need it to stay above certain levels. A key level for me is about 79,000. If it breaks below there, with sort of bull run structure is broken apart. So look, if it goes to 98, that's fine. Anywhere in the 80s, I think we're fine. For me, that's a buying price. The reason why I say that is I sold quite a lot of Bitcoin at all-time high, 109,000. I sold about 30% of my portfolio there. And I sold quite a lot of my Solana at all-time high. So I have a reasonable amount of money on the sideline now. And I'd quite like to put a bit more in, a little bit lower, because I don't think this is the end. If it is the end, we've obviously got to be prepared for that as well. So when I say it'll dip and I'll buy, I'll scale in. I'm not going to obviously put the 30% back in. Yeah. I'll probably put 5 to 10% back in, probably 5% per dip, because I want to keep some of that money away from the casino.
At 79, 5% back at 79.
Yeah. Oh, if it goes, I don't even want to see it go that low. But yeah, look, if it goes down into the 90s, so it's at 102 at the moment. So if it goes into the 90s, 98, 96, 95, 94, I'll go 10% in the 90s. And probably 10 or 20% probably 10% in the 80s, and keep 10% away from the casino, because I don't really. The last thing I want to do is put my winnings back in, and the casino takes it back from me. So,
are you putting more? Are you putting what you're thinking? Because like I'm very proud to say that I've put 0 fresh BTC in the casino for the last 18 months. Anything I'm playing at the casino is from the casino. So like it's very, what you're thinking around putting BTC into the casino? How much, when, why, how?
Yeah, putting something into the casino. Let's just.
So do you mean, would I use my Bitcoin to buy other things, or do you mean would I use
like using Bitcoin, like putting Bitcoin to go into like ape into memes or even anything that's honestly right now, like I think it's very clear, like that anything but Bitcoin is the casino. Like Solana's the actual
Or
casino.
stable coins, right?
Yeah.
That are yielding
exactly.
now 10% in some places, right? Which is not too bad.
Yeah. So, to answer your question, look, the longer I'm in crypto, and this is my second cycle. So I guess I'm middle-aged in crypto, maybe, if it's a second cycle. There's a lot of new people. I'm the 21. I'm February 21 baby. So I was right there in the bull market. And the longer I'm in crypto, I must admit, the more I start to realize or feel like Bitcoin's going to be the digital gold for me. That's becoming stronger and stronger, my feeling. But the other thing I'm starting to see or realize is that a lot of the altcoins that I used to think were something are really just meme coins disguised as something important.
Right.
Look, don't get me wrong, Ethereum might be a little bit different to that, possibly. Sol might be a little bit different to that, but there's enough altcoin chains out there, enough chains to look at to go, geez, we don't need all of that. So I think a lot of companies just went a bit gung-ho in the ICO era and just launched everything they could. And we've got a lot of rubbish in the market. So to answer your question, I went around the long way. Would I use my Bitcoin to buy other things right now? No. I have a couple of, I've got ordinals already, you see, that's why I say that. So I've already got some ordinals, which you may be kind of alluding to. So I've got ordinals, I've got ruins, which are basically Bitcoin meme coins. I've already got that. So for me now, I just want to stack Bitcoin and hopefully sell into all-time high, which will hopefully be higher than where we are now, what we saw. I'm hoping for about 127K to about 150. I say hoping, we'll see if it hits right. Hope's not really good enough, but I think pretty strongly we could hit the 127 or about the 125, 127K. Anywhere above there for me is an absolute bonus. So I'm going to sell pretty heavily at about that mark, at about the 125K. But that's because, and what people need to understand is also comes down to your entry point. Where did you get in? And I was buying Bitcoin, some of you guys want to beat me to the entries, but during the bear market, when everyone was saying we're going lower, I was buying at about 30K. So, I kind of, I guess for lack of a better word, got some balls and bought the dip. So for me to sell around here, it's still about a 3 to 4X. So for me personally, that's a nice little win on Bitcoin. I learned a lot from the last bull run, and what I learned was take profit aggressively. Because last bull run I left too much money on the table, way too much, and I will not do that this time. So I might have less profit this time, maybe, but I don't mind. I can think of nothing better than selling it and continue going higher. That's fine, like that's all good. The last thing I want to do is be holding my bags like I did last bull run and went to the bear. My altcoins got annihilated. Oh, look at Sol, went down to about $8, didn't it? So
yeah, that was a miracle. But I want to kind of show you this. You're talking about the 79 region, so that's around here. I think the Fibonacci always hit the spot. As you can see, like the half, the 50% was around the all-time high of 3 cycles ago, 2017 babies, 2021 around there. So it goes up to 100K. I think if it breaks like the previous all-time high of about 74, I've struggled to see it going back down there. But if it does, I have kidneys and livers on hand extra just to make sure I take advantage.
Or maybe a little less. But I wanted to basically say something, especially because people are listening, and not everybody's a trader, and not everybody understands the discipline of it. And I'm guessing Craig had some experience trading and maybe other assets previously. And it sounds like you have the discipline to keep the liquidity on the side for the next kind of down price to rebuy. But I also just wanted to say that there is a big movement out there, especially in the US, where there's, like I said, more opportunities to leverage your assets, never to sell your Bitcoin. And it doesn't come from the maxis philosophy, because you don't have to use Bitcoin to buy meme coins or altcoins. Like you can just use your credit card or whatever assets you have, right? So the maxis always had this idea that Bitcoin's gonna go up very high, and it doesn't make it's too risky and to touch it, first of all. And, that's the first point. And the second point, it's very tempting to sell it high and then rebuy it low, and then at the same time, even if you hit all the marks, what happens if you spend the money or whatever, you're tempted to buy other stuff in the meantime, and you really need that discipline or those liquidity available when the price is low. Like I remember back in, I don't know when there was like when the price hit like 20, and I was like, oh my God, and I had a startup, and I put all my money into the startup because we were fundraising, and I needed to complete to have a longer runway. And I was like, okay, so this was really bad financial management on my part. Like I really needed the money to be sitting there and waiting, right? So the majority of the people don't have that. And that's where I see the amazing opportunity in the US. A lot of people are just sitting on millions, right now in Bitcoin. And so not only in the US, by the way, this is accessible, I think, to a lot of people now, that you can leverage your Bitcoin and get up to 75% LTV. And I still need to kind of wrap my head around like what happens if BTC like goes way down. And they do have hedging and everything else, but still I need to understand like the risk mechanisms like before putting millions of dollars in BTC. But the reality is people are living in nice homes now, because they can borrow against the Bitcoin. They can put the interest, basically, either by buying 2 homes, renting one, repaying the interest. The interest is like 10%, which is reasonable, I would say, for this type of an asset. Although for a collateral loan is pretty high, it gives you an opportunity to keep your Bitcoin and right?
Sorry, this is my dog going crazy. Sorry. I'm trying to look for the mute button.
Oh, my dog. That's
the
dog is like, invest in Dogecoin.
Dogecoin. No, exactly what you're saying. What you're saying is exactly right. And just to add to your comment, there's a site, and everyone do your own research on this, called Nexo, that you can borrow against your Bitcoin at about at 8% if you hold a certain amount of their tokens. So I've done that. So you can borrow against your Bitcoin instead of selling your Bitcoin. The risk is that if the Bitcoin drops lower than your ability to service the loan, or what the difference is, the gap, you need to then get that money in immediately, or they'll start liquidating your crypto sitting in there. So there is a balancing act to it, but exactly what you're saying is right. And I think more and more products are going to come along, because obviously the powers that be are going to realize there's people like us out there in the world that actually don't really want to sell it, because we're just selling it back into the problem, fiat.
Yeah.
I think I want to get a take on this borrowing strategy, because everyone's like, never sell your Bitcoin, whatever, borrow against it. And obviously Bitcoin is the best collateral type that ever existed. But what's the end game? And applies also, like, I'm a big MSTR moon boy. So obviously Michael Saylor's my spirit animal, and he's the number one guy. Every guy that asks me, like, what should I be listening to?
Yeah.
What should I be watching? My media diet, straight away Michael Saylor. So what's the end game to eventually keep taking loans, and reservicing them, and using your old loan to pay off your new loan to pay off your old loan, and then you keep running that? Or is the game the idea is that I want to take a loan with Bitcoin collateral, because I know that in a couple years' time I'll be able to sell less Bitcoin in order to pay back that loan. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, how do you guys see it long term? The whole borrowing strategy is a way to get, because that, yeah.
Yael, you might be better to feel that, yeah.
I think both of us probably have pretty much the same to say, because, I mean, every 10, 20 years, you have a new asset class coming out. And Bitcoin is super interesting, and it was different from other things. But if you look in history and the trajectory of how fast certain assets are growing, whether it's S&P 500, whether it's mutual funds or index funds and stuff like that, right? And I think the next wave is going to be private asset ETFs, which is something that I'm working on. So no bias there at all. But the cool thing about Bitcoin versus all the other assets is that in 2010s we just started the exponential growth and things started moving fast. But now it's times 100. And so Bitcoin grew very fast versus other assets that might have taken, a couple of decades. But the growth is not that crazy. The growth of that asset is not that insane. And it's an alternative asset that has all the same symptoms as others. And in the beginning was, of course, the talk was, oh, there's nothing behind it. There's nothing behind anything, pretty much. And now there's not even anything behind energy because, imagine you have nuclear fusion and you have now the Chinese, because of these crazy constraints that were put on them, developed the chip, or not even the chip, the way to train models that is hundreds times more efficient even now than like OpenAI's. It's funny how you put constraints on something and then it grows out of proportion. And so now, like, everything is turned on its head. Even the energy market, if you don't have constraints on energy, imagine where the market, I don't even know, frankly, like you have to really kind of run these models and like imagine where the market's going to go. But BTC is just like any other alternative asset that you can, and that's growing over time. So you can borrow against it, refinance, and play this shuffle game. So that's it.
Yeah, it's and that's the way I feel about it as well. Exactly, spot on, and gives me goosebumps hearing that stuff. And I kind of feel sometimes that's how I kind of know I feel like I'm in the right spot hearing stuff like that. But exactly right. And people say, Bitcoin's not backed by anything, but neither's the US dollar. It is actually. It's backed by a massive army, but which is quite ineffective cost-wise. It's expensive to back the US dollar. It's very expensive. So once, I think it takes a little bit for people to wrap their head around cyberspace, the internet. I mean, we had the same when it was .com, right? The thing with .com, I was quite young. I'm 43 now, so I was young as I was a teenager, but I was old enough to see it. And that's why when Bitcoin and crypto came along, that's one of the reasons I left my job, because I was like, man, this looks like the internet 2.0. Or a more powerful, the internet, but finance, or actually the internet, but everything. It's gigantic. And I think, I believe crypto is going to eat absolutely everything. There's nothing it won't eat, because everything will become tokenized, because it serves us all for it to be tokenized. So of course it will. And, everything takes the path of least resistance, and there's less friction. It's going to happen. They fight us first, and then they welcome us in, and now we've got ETFs, man. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's a good point, Craig, about the least resistance. And the funny thing is that's why banks are so afraid of the crypto industry, and I think they got it early on. And but the investment banks, the large investment banks, they got it that they need to slow it down.
Yeah.
And while they are developing their own stuff on crypto technology. And what took banks like 30, 40, 50 years to develop with this open banking and collaboration, and even bank transfers right now, Swift is, by the way, developing a lot of blockchain solutions. I've been in a couple of their events and I spoke to a couple of their people that are involved, and it's, you can, of course, take the same organizations and power them with blockchain. But this technology is now revolutionizing transactions everywhere. And, we're back into, I don't even know, frankly, Craig, though, like, I don't know if there is a difference between fiat or non-fiat. Strictly speaking, maybe just the control of who's issuing it. So value-wise, right? So is that what you're saying when you're saying, we're fueling the problem by putting money into fiat?
We're fueling the problem. What by what? Sorry, by converting back to fiat.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I didn't mean it as extreme as that sounded. I more meant we're going back. Sorry, what I mean by that is how it's infected by inflation. So it's really, it's being degraded over time is more what I meant there. But I understand. It's quite a funny thing in the timeline. Like I said, I made a post the other week about selling a whole bunch of my Bitcoin, and there's nothing that gets people upset more than hearing you sold. But something I learned over the last run was you need to put some money in your bank sometimes. I've got a mortgage to pay, and they don't accept Bitcoin at the moment. So you do unfortunately have to convert to fiat to exist in this world, although there are ways semi around it now. There are sites out there you can use crypto to buy gift cards, you can buy groceries, you can do just about everything, but can't pay my mortgage yet, unfortunately. But yeah, so I don't think fiat's necessary. Fiat's not the enemy. It's it's man's the enemy. You can't have a man in charge of money. You can't have anyone in charge of money because greed eventually gets to us all.
Well, shout out to my buddy Adam Yarnold from Fin3 Tech. You can have him here. Maybe he's the one who is the expert in the loans, BTC backed loans. So maybe
I want to shout out to your buddy BTC. I want to learn about the loans. That's fair. But I want to ask you guys. You mentioned that everything's going to be tokenized, and both from the more Degen side and the institutional side, like, is that a good thing? Right, and I ask because, like, on the Swift side, if these, I'm just in my mind, I got that, that fat dude, the head of the Bank of International Settlement, the one that always like wearing the jacket and it's always looks like the button's always about to break. I forgot his name. You know what I'm saying? So I've got him in his. Like, if you have that guy, if he's got on-chain access to all, like, you can stop you in a second. Like, is that a good thing to give these, non-governmental like these multinational organization that much power? And on the other hand, like on the Degen side, everything's tokenized, but that just means that Fred Krueger can launch a rug. That just means that Melania Trump can launch a rug. Like everyone's just launching rugs. Like, is that a good thing? And if not, how do we bring it back to be like a net positive?
I think it's I think it's just a teething problem. It's just a teething problem. I'm trying to go back to your original question. There's a few things in there. Sorry, you go, Yael. I'm going to come back on that one, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, is it good or bad? So the question is, what is our goal? What do we want to accomplish? What do you think? Do we want to get to, do we want to help as many people, improve technologies, solve world hunger, reduce the wars? Like, what do we want to do?
I think all of that. And I think, sorry to touch on what you said before, an open book. So you made mention, what I like about crypto is everything's on the blockchain. So you can look up a wallet and see everything that's happened. What I've noticed over my years being alive is the government seems to like to take a look at everybody else, but not have anyone have a look at them. And right. I'd like there to be checks and balances for those above as well, from those below, even because those above serve those below, right? So there shouldn't be above and below. I think it should be side by side. So anyone who's got a problem with that, I think, is probably skimming off the top. Don't blame them, but their time's up.
100%. And I think that's exactly that was the answer to my question, right? But let me nuance this. I think that we still are not ready to exist in the world without the government. Yeah. And I had this thought last night, and we always criticize the government. And I got into a fight with somebody on Instagram over, the Israeli government treatment of the Holocaust survivors, which I think is unacceptable. And we're getting criticized left and right. And I love it that we're getting criticized, because I'm thinking, Israel needs to get this shit together. And we're trying to, at least the citizens. And so we're not ready. But then I was thinking, the government is a crazy machine. It's managing, like, we're here managing like 9 million people, wars, and still creating crazy technologies and, creating pharmaceutical and medical solutions that are on par with the largest nations out there, like America and China. I mean, it's insane. And it is, it's taken, 70 years to build over here. And it's functioning. I am actually in awe. And it's not functioning amazingly, but it is functioning. And it's like a corporation, and which is now taken to extremes in America, right? With the new administration, like it's corporation, it's like corporation 2.0, par excellence. So what I mean by that is that we're not ready to run the world without the governments. They're not perfect, and they need to be kept in check. They need, so like you said, Craig, and I don't know if we're even ready to run the world without the fiat aspect of it, managed by the government entities. And I would love to take a couple of years off, although time is running so fast, so I don't know. But and actually sit there and create the new economic models, and I'm sure people are doing that. To understand how we're going to be running things in the new reality, because the government is going to become obsolete. But today, it is the best way to function in society is to have this dual kind of control, right? So going back to the question of where everything is tokenized, everything will be tokenized because it's just a cheaper and faster way to move assets and, by the way, move them somewhat safely. Not everything will be bought, and most, obviously Trump coin, Melania coin were bought because, and by the way, they were bought by, the richest people in America and in the world. And the whole point was obviously to support the movement and to make people a little richer at the end of the day, to fuel the money back into the economic machine, which is good and bad, right? It's creating jobs and so on and so forth. So these people are not just sitting on their money. The money is not, you have billions of dollars, but it's not that somebody has $1 billion, even in the Bitcoin now, right? Like that, by the way, was my biggest problem with Bitcoin and people just sitting on Bitcoin, and was that money is not working. And
it's not circulating, or you mean, or I hear you. Good point. That's a good point.
Yes.
And I agree with you about governments as well. It's interesting. Something I thought about is how sort of DAOs came out and things like that. People are having voting power, and one of the with teams giving community voting power. And it's interesting. You spoke about we're not ready for the government to step down and just civilians to run the show. And DAOs are a good example of that, whereby sometimes it's better to have a strong leader than it is to have 100 people putting in their opinion, because and I've seen that happen with so many companies and other movements that I actually agree with you. It's just about, I suppose, getting the right people in the right place. But I think that the structure is actually probably not bad. It's just, it's mankind, isn't it? We're faulted. We have sins, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I always thought blockchain would be an antidote to that, like, because everything's transparent and because tokenomic design can be built in a way to encourage cooperation as opposed to competition, then we would sort of curtail man's most base greed. But it turns out that I was way off mark, and it's been opposite. The fact that I can mint a pump fund with 3 clicks, it has unleashed greed on a different level altogether.
Yeah.
It has that. It's good and bad, like any technology. I know when the internet came about, there's been awesome things it's done, and then you could mention a lot of dark things it's done.
Yeah, well, Silk Road Founder just got released also, right?
I know. That was pretty cool for the. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool for the Bitcoin, but well, just for freedom. I thought he had probably copped.
I am like on the fence on that one. I mean, I'm all for second chances, but I was expecting for him to say, like, in the speech, like, I am deeply sorry and I served my sentence and now I'm going to devote my life to like doing amazing things in the world. Like I know. Like, right? It was lacking.
Some people were probably negatively affected by that site, right? There's been harm done.
Negatively, they were killed and murdered.
Yeah, so maybe I agree with you. Maybe he perhaps should have touched on that and said, look, these things that I regret. Definitely.
Like, I'm humbled, I never thought this would happen. Thank you so much. And by the way, I'm now going to, for the rest of my life, I don't know. So that
no, I tend to agree with you as well. There's good and bad, and that story there. I suppose we've got to be careful not to hold someone as a hero who actually effectively set up a marketplace for drugs and things. So
Same with Telegram, right? Like people are hailing the founder as a hero, you know, like this kind of rogue Peter Pan figure. And then he says, oh, I run my team. I have like a team of a couple of dozen engineers and that's it, versus, you know, WhatsApp and stuff like that has thousands. And I'm thinking to myself, it has thousands because there's regulation that you have to adhere, that you have to figure how to not harbor terrorists and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And but then the one thing that people don't understand, because when you say something with conviction, and Trump is a great example of that, or almost any leader, right? And when you say something with conviction and like you know what you're talking about, people will believe you. And you know, case in point, the Flat Earth Society, and now ChatGPT proving that the Earth is flat because you asked, you know. So do whatever you ask. Yeah.
Is it the ChatGPT say that the Earth's flat? Did it? If you ask the right way.
If you want to ask it, like it can hypothetically create whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Good point. That's really good.
Yes.
Point.
So basically, the thing about the Telegram is that you know, when he's saying with conviction that, oh, but the terrorists can create their own apps. You know, now you can in a couple of minutes whip up your own app to send messages. But then the people listening are thinking, wow, the guy makes so much sense. And they don't realize that, you know, it's much easier to hide the needle in the haystack than out there in the open, right? If you have a Telegram that's harboring, you know, all these groups, that's much different than these groups creating their own Telegram, right?
Yes. So, and if the app's already out there created and usable, I mean, people are going to flock to that rather than create their own, mostly.
Exactly.
It's costly to create their own. It takes time. There might be bugs. Why not just jump on there and use it?
Yeah. Yeah. And also you can discover them if they have their own. On Telegram, they just go unannounced. So we got to think about, so back to the good in the world. I really want to see this happen. And I think the community in general, even though there's of course greed and other things, but the community of Bitcoin and the community of crypto community that I've met, like while traveling all over the world and, you know, being in these groups, is generally a positive and, you know, a good loving, peace loving community. And I think that we need to take that to the next level.
No, I think you're right in holding companies and businesses accountable from our point of view, from the consumer, saying, no, that's not good enough, and hold them accountable is important for us, because we have an opportunity now to lay the roads where they go. We've got an opportunity to dictate that. That's what I think super exciting about this time of being alive, is there's massive growth opportunities here for humans in every which way, and in a much more peaceful way. And, you know, being in Israel, I'm sure that's top of your mind. I was born in South Africa. Peace wasn't there for a long time, and in fact still isn't. And one of the reasons why I'm so big in crypto, because it can help people without banks, the bankless, rather than using other more expensive options. But coming from countries where there's no peace and there's war, you start to realize how little money means in that moment in some ways, you know. So hopefully crypto and Bitcoin and everything can hopefully remove the need for armies to be as heavy-handed moving over time. But that's a heavy topic. Sorry, guys.
No, I think first of all, Bitcoin definitely reduces the incentive for war, because you can see even some stats on the US, what percentage of wars, the US wars, have been funded by money printing versus maybe loans and other means. And in the Korean War, it was like money printing was a very small part of it, and now it's basically all, the entire DoD budget. And so Bitcoin definitely reduces the need for war, in a sense that you can't print the money to get out of it, and war is also profitable to the manufacturers of arms and all these kind of people. So I want to say GM to everyone who's on the stream, to Tal and Hernan and Dovi and Lisa Stein. What's cool, Messenger Yael? You're going to have to tell us about that. We are getting to the end of the show, and I still haven't heard about Dibs, Yael's venture of tokenized securities. So, Yael, I'd love to maybe, you didn't even have a chance to intro yourself. Maybe tell us a little bit more about what you're building over there at Dibs.
Yeah, thank you. So DIB's message is something that I've been working on for 20 years now, actually, and that's bringing private assets and liquidity to private assets so that they can grow more sustainably and without, let's say, compromising what you're building in order to show very, very high growth, which is what the industry wants. And this is, high risk, high growth is a privilege for the very, very wealthy, while the rest of us that are out there building stuff, and I've discovered, and it seems like, Craig, you're also kind of in the same category, that you can either build stuff full time or you can invest full time. And it's very hard because you have to focus. So while I'm out there building stuff, I want to, let's say, create a safety net and put my money in a good asset that's growing higher than the market. And the usual measure of that is S&P 500 grows about 10% a year, but unfortunately, on average, right? Unfortunately, the inflation is getting up there as well. So our mission was to enable this effective liquidity for high growth, for high, not ultra high, but high growth companies. And we've built a settlement system, which was kind of revolutionary back in 2018. Powered the first security token with the Aspen coin. And the industry has a lot of jargon, and we had to adhere to the jargon, tokenized securities, blah, blah, blah. But all it really was a way to settle your investment versus the asset. And the asset came in paper form, so it's very hard to even buy it. Like, how do you buy a piece of a contract, right? That's not on an exchange anywhere. How do you buy it? Like, who do you go to? Where do I go? Who do I call? So we enabled the system where you could easily go and buy a contract that allows you to gain yield from a real estate asset. It's so simple, yet so hard, and most people in the industry still don't get it. So I'm here to set the record straight what tokenization is. So that was the first step. We thought that the market would catch up. Like 5 years later, it has not caught up. The settlement, everybody started developing the same settlement systems. Everybody has the same thing now. But nobody's developed, not a huge institution has developed a system, like you have PayPal and e-commerce. So there's PayPal and Amazon, and they powered each other. So the PayPal is here, there's no Amazon. So I'm like, when is this going to happen? And then we realized nobody's incentivized enough from the large institutions to do this, and they don't want to play together because they already are playing together without the rest of the public. So then we said, we're going to actually go out and do this. So we rebranded Solid Block into DIBS, distributed brokers, and essentially adopted NASDAQ model with slight modification, made it decentralized. NASDAQ works with a couple of large brokers, Interactive Brokers, Robinhood, and to bring a large number of people in the public to trade, public securities. We are adding, because blockchain has an unlimited potential to add a crazy number of stakeholders that can work together. Traditional financial systems cannot do that. So we're able to add thousands of independent brokers, broker-dealers, to bring both assets and investors to the game, which creates a huge network, a mega network. Instead of small siloed marketplaces here and there, we're able to connect all the public exchanges to the private world, so bridge between Web 2 and Web 3. And we're able to tokenize essentially any asset securely, place the original asset into custody, so on-ramp and off-ramp, both fiat crypto and traditional assets of any kind, provide institutional grade security, and essentially place all of these assets into different baskets, whether it's, let's say, an S&P 500 style index fund of pre-IPO companies, unicorns, and place that on a big number of exchanges out there at the same time, and all at a fraction of a cost that any institution can do. So we're out there to redefine what it means to trade assets, and we have the whole methodology from A to Z, and we're fundraising right now. So now we're about to close our first batch of investors, and then through a safe, and then raise the valuation a bit and put it out there for a large number of people. So If
Are you
anybody
going to
wants,
fundraise through your? Are you going to dog food? Are you going to fundraise through your platform?
yeah. But
That's
we
cool.
need to place it. We need to place it on the compliant rails, which is very
Yeah.
expensive.
So let's
Uh,
talk a little bit about compliance, because that's what interests me the most. Like, people here, like, you can tokenize, and this is Jonathan's question, tokenization of bonds and other securities. That's exactly what we're talking about. Good morning, GM to Jonathan. We're talking about bringing high risk, not bonds necessarily, but high risk, high reward plays to retail investors. The kind of private investment that were usually
yeah,
reserved for the VCs, private equity only.
yeah.
Uh, how do you look at regulation, compliance, and all that kind of stuff? Because I know from my time at INX, the US laws are very limiting when it comes to security token compliance. You have to get an exemption from SEC. That means that it's only tradable on an ATS. You can't trade the securities on Binance, for example, so it can get no liquidity, right? You have lockup periods and all that. How do you look at it? Are you going through US regulation, or have you found a country that's a little bit more friendly to innovation?
Yeah, I think we're thinking about it the wrong way. Everybody is, and the laws and the regulation there is for a reason. Now, the regulation is lax in the Asian countries and African countries, Latin American countries for a reason. People there invest very small amounts of money, and they lose it. It might hurt them because they don't earn that much. But on average, the maximum amount they'll invest maybe it is $1,000. In America, somebody is capable to put in 50,000 and lose it all. So the way we should be thinking about it is, like, if we want to go for this, finance or fintech for good, Bitcoin for good, the rules of risk have not changed. High risk, high reward, diversification, medium risk, medium reward, and so on. So you have the whole rule book of what your portfolio should look like, what you should invest in before you go out and invest in venture capital. Now, retail investors can participate and should participate. They should have access to these resources. And that's, in fact, for many people, is the only way to beat the market, is to invest in a highly diversified basket of private assets that someone else is managing or a machine is managing. That's where private asset ETFs, I think, are the top thing. The bad news is that when the institutions are structuring these ETFs, and there are a couple out there, they tend to throw out overpriced assets that they don't want, or maybe create a basket of some good stuff and some shitty stuff that they'll put in there. And by the way, a lot of tokenized funds, if you really go in and you look at them, like there are a couple of insurance companies that have put it out on like Avalanche and Polygon, and you go in and you look at those companies and you realize that this is not what I would invest in if I could. And the crypto community is also still very small. And now it's mainstream through ETFs, through Bitcoin ETFs, of course, right? And so everybody is almost exposed now to crypto. The majority, I think, of the Western world is exposed even through portfolios of their institutions, right? Or even if they bought into that Tesla stock or whatever, right? Like everybody's exposed to crypto, and not through Binances, but through traditional markets. And what we need is a way to create these diversified portfolios for retail. So we'll have let's say a couple of billion or $100 billion ETFs that are structured from the pre-IPO stocks that our platform rebalances with the market movement. We're the only one who have the mechanism to quite easily rebalance the ETFs through the liquidity mechanisms we have for private assets, because we digitize them, we settle them for thousands of parties at the same time. But I don't recommend for retail to even go and put a lot of money in OpenAI, for example, because it might be overvalued. It might reduce in half because of this Deepseek and others, right? And what? We're going to have them lose their money again. So the retail should stick to majority of their assets in diversified things and play a little bit if they have a little bit of money. The larger investors can play a little more. They can go in and they can invest directly in whatever assets they want. that's the game.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Craig, what's your thoughts on the whole who's this people? Who are these people? Are these them Quill? What is Quill? What is Quill Messenger? Is
I'm
that
not
something
sure
I
what
should?
that is.
Is that something I should be aware of? Is there alpha over there, Yael?
What's the contract address?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know
I
what
thought
it
it might
is.
be a spelling mistake the first time, but that's the second time. Yeah, I'm not sure what Quill Messenger is.
Quill Messenger was built specifically for GDPR. No, Craig, no CA, no pump, GDPR. It's like those European bottle caps. Those things aren't going to pump anytime soon.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
Okay, well, thank you guys. That was an incredible hour. Like I had a whole bunch of things I wanted to cover, and we got to maybe
I got to
3%
cover
of
nothing.
them.
I had my notes, but that was a great chat, dude. I
But
actually learned a lot there, so thanks, Yael.
I have before I let you guys go, I have to ask you about the puppets. Your runes take, Craig. Where are we going? I've been in ordinals and runes since like I got in October 23. So I would say that the third cycle, like we're already in our third. That's like a pretty early on into ordinals and runes. And I got balls deep, man. Like getting into the discords, getting into the conversation, buying assets, playing around with the tech. Like killing my pizza pets because I keep Shabbat and for 24 hours I couldn't feed them. I was thinking like, what the hell are these guys talking about?
You're going to scare Yael off from investing in this weapon,
I'm like runes and ordinals are pretty. We're in a very much in a winter for Bitcoin ecosystem.
We are.
What do you think? Are we coming back? And if so, how?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tricky question because obviously we haven't had many cycles of ordinals nor runes for me to base anything historically on. Gut feeling is for those assets, I think, to move, we need Bitcoin to rally high. I think we need a bit of a pump. I think we need people like me to take profit on Bitcoin and then want to flex digitally. And the easiest way to flex on people digitally on the timeline is obviously an image, right? So that's when I think you'll see people taking profits. So like I said, I reckon if Bitcoin rips to about 115K and starts to stabilize and you see dominance go down, I think Bitcoin dominance stays about 59%. So it's high. So basically too long to, don't have enough time, can't read it, just tell me. I think Bitcoin needs to rip up, break a new all-time high, pull back, consolidate. We also need the US dollar to pull back to let that happen. So there's a bit that needs to happen, but to really dumb it down, Bitcoin needs to break up and go higher. And then I think ordinals will have their time. Runes obviously is a slightly different kettle of fish because the trading of runes is quite cumbersome, as you will know anyway. So I saw in Magic Eden they've just announced that you can't brick the floor, meaning you can't have 50,000 of an item and put it at the cheapest price, meaning no one can buy it, so everyone's going to buy higher, which is quite a clever strategy by people that actually want to drive the price down. You brick the floor and then you buy lower. So anyone who's been in sort of trading cards or anything like that knows those tricks. So I've seen, so luckily enough, Magic Eden have come along and they're splitting the runes now. So you're not going to
they're not splitting them yet. They just have a limit on how much you can list. There's no auto split yet, but they're going to roll that out soon. It's a very crude solution, the 1,000 minimum maximum, but it's necessary. I mean, those floor bricking were devastating, and there's just no liquidity. There's just no buyers, no marginal buyers.
There needs to be liquidity pools. There needs to be a DEX. There needs to be liquidity pools. I kind of expected runes to have pumped. I mean, they did. But I expected them to pump. Higher, and by now, it does make you wonder. Sometimes there is a case of being too early. Maybe that's a case with them. I don't know. I still have about 5%, or less than that now. They've gone down in price. But I've probably got about 3 to 5% of my portfolio there. So with me and runes were kind of like a lotto ticket for me. I was like, I'm going to put a certain percentage of my portfolio there, and I'm willing to let that go to zero. And I say that, and I mean it. I've sold some on the way up, but not enough's gone on the way up. Ordinals, though, I think Bitcoin art and ordinals will do well. No, I almost feel no matter what happens, because they don't need much from platforms. You just buy and sell them. You know what I mean? You can't really brick floors. You don't need liquidity pools, things like that. Whereas tokens on Bitcoin, it's a different kettle of fish. And also, when you're trading Bitcoin tokens, there's also the slowness to be aware of. That's why people like Solana, because it's fast and it's cheap. So with Solana, you can buy a meme coin. You can walk away with a dollar profit. Obviously, everyone's going to die hearing me say that. But, you know, some people, you look at the P&Ls and the people are walking away because the gas is so low, they can actually earn $1. Now, to people in Western, you know, culture, that's not a lot of money. But to some people, $1 US dollars.
Yeah, it's a meal. It's a kilo of fish.
Yeah, it buys a lot of rice, man. So, you know, you've got to remember that, you know, which is, hey, look, maybe that's not a bad thing either. I'm not even saying it's a negative. But so for Bitcoin, that's where I think runes have a bit of a tricky part, because say you buy one, I've had transactions take 45 minutes to get my buy. What if it pumps? What if it 3x's in that time and then dumps? Probably can't because of the slowness of the chain. But let's say it does. What if I haven't even received it? I can't even sell it. So there's issues there, right? So, I mean, at the moment, if you're picking between trading on Solana and Bitcoin, as far as a casino goes, you're going to pick Solana all day. Artwork's a bit different. I like artwork on Bitcoin because it's on there. It's not on a server that connects to their Ethereum. You know what I'm saying? It's the image is there. It's not going anywhere. You can put whatever you want on those sats, whether it be root or not, and it's there forever and anybody can see it. So as long as it's indexed, sorry. So I like Bitcoin for art. Runes, I do like. I'm just a big Bitcoin fan, man. I love Bitcoin.
Yeah. We forgot to talk about something really important that I had in mind, and I think also you kind of inspired me now.
Yeah, go.
I mean, I'm not a trader. Like, I don't do casinos. I wasn't excited about NFTs, and frankly, I don't have time. And maybe that's why, you know, some people are driving around in very expensive cars, but. So I think that it all, you know, very few people are kind of into the casino scene. It's interesting, and it's a game, and it's just like playing video games and things like that, dopamine and stuff like that, and it's nice. Yeah. I think it's a nice hobby. You know, I see my kids. You know, it's hard to get them away from. I have to go through a video game to tell them to go and eat dinner. Like, I know it's fun, and why not make some money at the same time, right? So that's awesome. What I think, though, like, there's going to be a big opportunity, and I'm waiting for somebody to do it because I don't have the time. But there's two things. One is the layer 2s on Bitcoin, the Lightning Network, right? Yeah. And that's also why the whole community and people who own and who hold Bitcoin, they understand that it's also becoming the system or the network that will power everything, and applications included, right? So Ethereum was the leading layer 1. Now you had all the layer 2s. It begs, you know, I want to know where Solana and others gonna be once Bitcoin is gonna be so super easy to build on top of with that. So I'm a big fan of a couple of networks out there, and specifically Bitcoin investor networks that are supporting these tokenized bonds on Stoker, for example. So that's cool. But that's securities. In the utility sense, I'm paying right now hundreds of dollars, if not thousands, for AI applications. Every time something new comes out, like video editor, so that's another, I don't know, $30, $50 a month. And so I would love for all the, you know, these types of ICOs, coming out. They're all coming out of Asia anyway. Don't give me meme coins. Like, that's not useful for me in any way, shape, or form. The casino thing, I was not a gamer. Like, I had these games where you press the space button, it's like, and bombs fell out of whatever. So, but give me something useful. Let me support an app that solves my problem, that has a promise that I know it can deliver, because it's so easy. Let it have a community. I want to have an amazing social media app with agents that run around. Like, I don't want to pay $200 for ChatGPT operator. And I want somebody to come up with a cheaper agent, which, by the way, is out there right now, but they're all crap. They're not real. I looked into those things. They're not real. I want somebody to come up with apps. I will invest and in maybe 10 or 20, and I'll wait for them to grow. And if they're not useful, guess what? I'll be trading, because I want to use a different app. And then you really have the utility token like they were supposed to be, right? To see. And so let me know when that's out there. And I'm happy to put my money down.
I think that will happen more and more moving forward now. That I suppose the ease of regulations in the US will drive a lot of that now. We'll see whether that happens. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I don't think the main point of all of this was to be betting on meme coins with silly names, right? I don't think that's not why I came. And it's like you said, it's a good little side gig. So for all the listeners out there that think I'm just investing in meme coins all day, I'm definitely not. That would be a 5% little, play around kitty. No, invest with long-term horizons. Would be my take on investing. Look at decades, especially if you're young enough to. If you're young enough to, and you're 20 years old listening to this, Jesus, you've got an advantage on me. Just start buying Bitcoin now, I reckon, what you can afford to lose anyway. And you probably don't have to play too many casinos. Just, dollar cost averaging slowly with what you can afford to lose. And in 10 years' time, you'll probably be buying a couple of houses, I reckon. So far, the data supports it anyway. If it changes, I'm not too sure. But that's what so far has been happening. But I agree with you. It'll be nice when we get some real usable applications with blockchain, which was the reason we all came here. And then we all found ourselves buying strange pictures for overpriced amounts of money, which is fun, but not really solving world problems, as you're alluding to.
A little bit. It's moving the industry forward.
And getting it to be taken seriously, I think, as well. Because it is, those of us who are in it, maybe, you speak to, I guess a good example is if you go to a cafe and you start speaking to people about crypto, which I don't, but if I did.
Yeah, you're building connections.
I spoke to a guy today. I went out today and I was chatting to a guy, older guy. He's retired now, but he ran me through a whole bunch of businesses, very successful guy. And I mentioned crypto and he was 78 years old. And while he was interested, he's like, it's all mumbo jumbo to him, and he might be a bit old for my example I'm trying to give, but there's still a lot of people out there that just think it's a load of nonsense.
Sell them a Reagan meme coin.
And when they think it's a load of nonsense, and then you see a coin come out with a rude name or whatever, it's hard to then go, no, we're serious. It would be nice if some applications came out that could get in normal people's hands, that they could then see the value of crypto, because that will be the gateway to other crypto versus casino, which is probably let's be honest, it's probably a young man's arena, probably the casino, I'm going to say, testosterone fueled. It's going to be majority younger men. I agree with you. There's there's big opportunities for companies that come in and actually build something of actual use case. I'm into it too. I'd like to invest in more serious things, to be honest.
I think the purpose of meme coin was really to provide a signal for women who are out there looking for a husband, to avoid those guys.
On who to avoid.
I like that. I didn't know where you were going to go with that. Brilliant.
On who to avoid. Avoid the meme coin husband.
Avoid meme coin people for sure.
Pick yourself. Check his portfolio, ladies, not his genetics. If he's holding Bitcoin and going the other way. Thank you guys. It was an excellent stream. I will be posting a full recap on Thursday, cutting some clips of our choice stream. If you want to get the full recording, then we go. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. We had LinkedIn and Twitter show up, which means we are doing our part to unite the polls and bring everyone together. I think it was a very good conversation around not just how and what, but the why, and sort of going deeper into that. So thank you, and we will see you next week on The Breakfast Show.
Yay.
Thanks, guys.
See you later. Thanks for having us. Bye bye.